Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are so delighted to have you here today with us. I'm Karine Argendreyer. Together with Remat, who hide her name because she is question at ESWN, we are both the chairs for the event for ESWN, and we are really happy that you can join us today here for this event, How to Write a Great LinkedIn Profile. We're honored to feature today Dr. Sanaya Korashi, Head of Research Development and Culture at University of Liverpool in the UK. And we hope that you will enjoy this upcoming event. So Rima, please press the next slide. Let us tell you what to expect for this event. We'll have a very, very short welcoming, and then we'll have an introduction to the session by our speaker. We'll then take you to breakout room where you're going to have active learning and practicing LinkedIn skill in small group. This would take 15 minutes. We'll then talk about future learning about LinkedIn with our guest speaker. We'll then have a short break, and we'll have our post-event and small group discussion. If you have any question or tech issue, please send them to question@ESWN. You are all muted for the duration of the event, and you also appear in a general ESWN. So feel free if you would like to change your name, you do not have to. All right. In order to make sure this event happens smoothly, we are hoping you all gonna obey to our ESWN code of contact. And Remat will put it again in the chat. You all have to look at it when you signed up for this event. All aspects of this event, except the breakout room, are recorded for our unsynchronized participation. We will then post this event on our YouTube. So if you have to leave because you have other things that you have to do, do not worry. This main part of the event without the breakout room will be on our YouTube channel. This event is fully closed caption. You will be muted for the duration of the event. But again, if you would like to change your name, feel free to do that. Again, send question to ESWN. Send any technical issues also to question@ESWN. And just so you know, you will be in mixed ability group for the learning exercise for this event. So please be respectful for each other and the different learning style that each one of us is bringing, and also our learning and our knowledge level. So for those of you who this is their first time in one of our events, Earth Science Women Network or ESWN have been active for the last 20 years. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to increase diversity across geoscience, emphasizing on creating support, nurturing community across everyone who work in the geoscience community, and we are an international group. So we're very honored for you to join us today. We hope that you will be respectful for each other during this event, and we'll just say that we're always welcome for more ideas. So this idea for this event came because you told us you're interested in it. So if you have additional ideas, please let us know. So as we said, we had a survey back in 2021. We're planning to do another one coming up soon. So we want to know what you would like to learn. What would you like us to set events for? Also, if you would like to replace us as co-chairs, send us an email, let us know. So multi-career stage and cross-sector, we have people from different places around the world at different stages. And we want to help you finding job, hunting the best job, the next stage for your career. All right, so with no further ado, I'm honored to introduce our speaker for today's event, Dr. Sanaya Korashi.
Lovely. Thank you for that very generous introduction, Corinne and Rehmet. I'm especially happy to be here today, and I want to thank you before I kick into the discussion, just to all of the members of the ESWN and also the board of directors for all the support, and especially for putting on these really important activities. So you already know who I am, but just a quick overview of a whistle-stop tour of LinkedIn that we're going to have. There were over 500 responses to the sorts of things that colleagues wanted to learn that they posted to the Myra board, and Remet and Kareen very kindly themed them. So the three main areas that I'll be talking about is how to get started on LinkedIn and defining goals. That's based on two themes that came out from what you yourself said that you'd like. Building your audience and networks, and developing content and understanding how to make your content work harder. I just want to caveat this by saying that, again, there's a range of skills. There's a number of colleagues that said that they don't even currently have LinkedIn profiles, and a number of colleagues who already do, who'd like to really learn some tips and tricks to develop them further, but also tips and tricks for job hunting when you are on LinkedIn. And before I move into the next slide, which is about getting started, I wanted to say that everything I'm talking about today is on the basis of your having a free LinkedIn profile. So not having to pay any extra subscription for a premium profile or anything like that, which is, again, it's a personal choice, and there are loads of pros to it, but it's quite a heavy investment. So I wanted to target the things that I'm going to talk about today primarily to be focused on those that are available freely, no matter where you are in the world. Okay, so to begin with, obviously depending on what your career aspirations are, it really is useful to put your title because it helps build that authenticity about your professional background and your expertise. It's important to have a photo. I know that not many colleagues are comfortable having that, but if there is some sort of identifiable visual identity that you are uniquely associated with, that would be great to include in your photo. A lot of people have questions about the headline, which LinkedIn has, the free LinkedIn version has a maximum capacity for 220 characters. And so really every word counts, and it's important that you try and make it worth the space that you are giving to it. It's basically being short and snappy because it's the summary that appears whenever anybody searches for you on LinkedIn. That's what the headline is. Lower down within the main LinkedIn page, you've got more of an area. It's about 3,000 characters that you have in which you can write a summary, which is the same as your bio. And in that, it's useful to have information about your research, your work experience, teaching, impact. This is usually a more narrative sort of blurb that you write in a summary format. It's useful to put bullet points there as well. It's important to try to avoid technical language and to note that it's distinct from the other parts of your profile, which obviously we'll come to shortly in the next few slides, but to not repeat information. The important thing about the bio is when recruiters are looking or putting their search terminologies in LinkedIn, these are the words. You may have heard of, I won't get into technical terminology like search engine optimization, but so these are the key words from your bio, from your headline summary, especially that are picked out when recruiters are doing their LinkedIn searches. So it's just important to be mindful about what are the words that you want to be known for, or that you want people to pick out if there are recruiters, or even not just recruiters, sorry, other colleagues. Maybe you're building your community through LinkedIn. It's also useful. So when you sign up for LinkedIn, as mainly with any social media account, you have the option to personalize or customize the short URL or the public profile name. Usually LinkedIn adds a lot of numbers and letters to it, but you have the option, again, as long as the the unique profile name that you want isn't taken, you can do that, and that's really helpful to then add it as almost a short URL to your CV or email signature. And then the last part of the top section of your LinkedIn page, the main focal area as you scroll from the top, is you have the option to add additional URLs. And so this is really helpful if you want to add your ORCID profile, or if you have your own, say, blog that you run, institutional web page, specific publications that you may want to highlight, and so on. Um, Moving on, uh, additional elements of an effective LinkedIn profile specifically for academics is worth keeping in mind. I wanted to highlight these few sections over here. There are many other sections, I should say, within LinkedIn. So you'll be able to add separately a section for your honors and awards, a separate section for your volunteering experience. So you can always, as you develop your profile, you can begin to you'll get a feel for what you would like to showcase about or celebrate about your professional experiences and your background. But the key ones that recruiters or the LinkedIn community generally have in the main are experience. Now, it's really important, and I've fallen into this trap myself before, is to ensure that there's no technical language, and the language that I'm using is understood by anyone, even those are outside academia. So just making sure that you translate, technical terminology. So principal investigator is the example that I've given over here. The other thing is it's always helpful to quantify impact, because that is something that speaks quickly to people scanning profiles. Skills and endorsements is also a really quick and snappy way to showcase where your strengths lie in. And you also have the opportunity to turn on the setting for others to endorse you on LinkedIn for having certain skills and strengths. And you can also attach skills and strengths with particular experiences or particular qualifications as well. So it's just a case of playing around a little bit with the settings, but worth keeping in mind. So for instance, the first three skills are usually listed, and then somebody to go deeper has to click view more. So it's about making use of that valuable real estate that already is visible at the first click when someone goes to your profile. Publications and projects, there's a separate section within which you can write, you can highlight or showcase specific work that you've done, and particularly, interdisciplinary collaborations. When I present this workshop, it's usually at this point I get a question about, are you able to sort of also tag your collaborators and or connect with, mention them where tag their profiles where you're writing about interdisciplinary collaborations. And unfortunately, currently LinkedIn doesn't have that feature of tagging somebody else within your own main profile page. You have the option to tag them when you write posts. Those are completely separate, and we'll talk about that a little later in this presentation. One of the most powerful new features, it's only been about for the last 4 or 5 years or so, is featured content that you can sort of pin to the top of your profile. And I find that really powerful in terms of, helping to change the message about what you're showcasing about yourself. So whether it's an update, whether it's a LinkedIn blog post that you've made, whether it's just a separate video or a presentation or a publication that you just want to separately highlight, and add your own customized imagery as well. That's a really useful way to grab people's attention in a different manner every time they visit your profile. And I also like, again, this is not mandatory, but having a visual header. So for instance, at the top of my LinkedIn page, this is just sort of, it's a background almost at the top of the page, where I have taken the opportunity, well, just to self-publicize some of the key skills that I bring, that are applicable to a whole range of areas that I work on. So strategy, policy, professional practice, and so on. But it's not mandatory to have a visual header. Some people prefer just the simplicity of having a profile picture, your bio, your summary, your work experience, and then key skills, endorsements, and publications. Okay. The other thing, so coming back to the point that I was making earlier about making sure that the language that you have is not technical, it's important to emphasize that the skills that you have are in a language that others are able to relate to their own context, which also applies to, so if you're talking about teaching, learning and development, mentorship, public speaking, this is a language that anybody in any field, industry, charities, and so on, the third sector would understand. And I've given a few examples here. I know Remit and Kareen are kindly going to share my slides with you after this, so I won't go into the detail of them. But some other tips as well when you're talking about your professional experience are to think about, the collaborative aspects, the impact that you've made, talk about the quantitative results, and use bullet points. I'm a huge fan of the simplicity of bullet points as well. Uh, uh, a note on AI. I think this is super important because we all know that that recruiters are actually using AI, sometimes even to write job descriptions. AI is sometimes being used by recruiters to troll for keywords from different LinkedIn profiles. We know that software engineers are using it, harnessing it to develop code, and marketing professionals using it to develop social media posts as well. And I'll talk about some of the tips as well for youth for creating LinkedIn posts later on. But it's worth keeping in mind that there are a lot of pros and a lot of cons as well. And I talk about, I mean, some of the cons I've mentioned over here are, there could be bias, there's inaccuracy, and increasingly hallucinations, actually, but also the ethical issues, because that, especially in higher education, research, globally, even beyond academia, institutions are still grappling with what are the policies and the ethical issues associated with using it. Um, in terms of exploring whether AI can help you on LinkedIn, so I've got loads of resources at the end of my article at the end of my presentation that I'm going to link to. But some of the examples could be asking it for help with strengthening your profile. So whether you want to ask it, say, for help with writing your LinkedIn bio or your LinkedIn summary, help for creating content or editing text for posts. I want to caveat here, I'm not advocating, I'm not saying this is the way to do it, but I just want to be upfront and honest that these are options that people are using, and there are ethical aspects, issues around it. You can also, people are using LinkedIn to help develop bullet points that describe their work experiences. So taking job descriptions and asking for summaries that are powerful to be included on LinkedIn profiles. Asking it to help with keywords for you to include, particularly if it's very specific jobs that that you're targeting, and words that come up again and again in the job descriptions that are attractive to you. Also, refining your list of skills that are listed on your profile. I spoke about this earlier. The three that are listed are really really valuable real estate at the top of your profiles. They are increasingly building AI into LinkedIn, both for free and premium users. In fact, especially for free users, you'll see that you're often invited to comment on articles that are published on LinkedIn. And that is a way for them to train their LinkedIn AI based on the responses that people are giving freely, to then further refine some of the resources that they produce via LinkedIn training and so on. And it's just, yeah, AI is in a way a help or an aid for bringing together expert resources and guidance that could be used to make your profile stronger. Okay, so now that we've got the basics down for what a profile looks like, the main thing is content. Now, planning and developing content is really important because if it's done in a purposeful manner, it means that every post, all the time that you spend creating the content, you are basically doing it from a point where it also then does further additional work for you without having to really spend, you know, going down a rabbit hole of social media as we do sometimes end up doing. And I'm guilty of that because on LinkedIn, there's so many interesting perspectives that people share and so on. But some of the kinds of contents that maybe you've already thought about, but that are important, certainly as academics or as researchers, that we want to get ourselves out there are talking about new publications or resources, even if you've got preliminary conclusions, creating a post around that, sharing it, ending the post with, a thought-provoking question for people to add their own views and opinions to get that engagement. And then that automatically gets the LinkedIn algorithm to show your posts. As everybody knows, the way that social media operates with these unknown algorithms, but it shows it in other people's feeds, and before you know it, there's this snowball effect of commenting and interaction and engagement that is created. News items as well. Don't be afraid to shout, good news posts, to shout out good news posts about yourselves, about colleagues as well, showcasing their successes. Any blog posts, articles, or features that you do in other platforms that you can link in and share here. Thoughts on conferences you attend. This is particularly useful where there are already existing hashtags that you can hop onto, and I'll talk about hashtags in my next slide. Questions, particularly where you want to invite feedback, if there are things that you're thinking about for either framing conference presentations, posters as well is another good one. And it's important to keep posts short, concise. Again, every word counts. Every word counts in LinkedIn. And also to shout out about others, to lift others up. So repost interesting news items or posts from other people that you found. And I wanted to put this last point here because it's really important that you set aside, if not maybe once every month, once every couple of months, even if it's just 15 minutes, to go through your LinkedIn profile and make sure, the profile's up to date, the tenses that you've written in your jobs. So if you've moved jobs and you're saying, I currently do this, you're making the tense past tense for an old job. All these little things do make a difference and just give that impression, certainly to anybody visiting your profile, of the currency of the content that you have there. Okay, so a few best practice tips in this slide and the next one. Break down your content. It's, people love stories and narratives. Posting regularly, of course, always helps visibility. Images are a big one. We all know about, the stories of social media and how cute kittens and cute dogs get more imagery. So there are loads of free tools out there through which, and including AI tools actually, through which you can put in prompts to create relevant um, images that you can add to your post, because the research does show that images that have media on them, whether photographs, infographics, videos, and so on, get more engagement from people. Um, be yourself as well. Don't be afraid to use the first person, I, me, we, rather than speaking in the third person. And hashtags, which I mentioned before, are really important. Don't go blindly hashtagging everything, but trying to make them also do the work for you in terms of reaching your desired audience, in terms of, like I said, for example, conferences or key events where you know that there's going to be a select group that you want to reach out to. And also for promotions as well, if there are hashtags that you have that you would like to start getting traction on, um, it's a good way to include them in every post on LinkedIn. And it doesn't have to just be within the content, it could be even at the end of the content at the bottom. These are some other tips about making your content work harder for you. And we'll come now. I suppose this brings me to the breakout exercise that we're going to do. So how can you? So it's important, and I know in today's pressured world where we already have so many things competing for our attention and our time, but it is important to have a plan for the content that you're putting out on LinkedIn, especially if you know that this is one of your primary tools to reach out to recruiters, for job hunting, for connecting with your community of fellow researchers or fellow academics, or for engaging, getting the word out there about your research, about your work, and just reaching a much broader audience. So, in terms of making your content work harder, put links to your social media profiles on your every time you talk to people, be very um the word coming to mind is narcissistic, but I'm hopefully everyone gets what I mean, but be very purposeful about your sharing a way to contact you and a way to connect with you, because not everybody will remember to go and Google you later, or particularly if you've got, a name with a tricky spelling. It's always much easier for if you share a simple link that people can just click on whenever you're connecting with them in other fora. Whenever you've got a blog post, a publication, good news to talk about, good news that you want to celebrate of your wider connections, post about those. And I've noted over here, make them discoverable for a wider audience. Uh, I sort of have done this presentation on the assumption that when you set up your LinkedIn profile, you will make all the key areas that I've spoken about public. LinkedIn has fantastic settings for customization, so you can make every section private. Like each of the sections, you can change the audience for them. So I would definitely have a play around with that. It's in the privacy and content settings when you go to your LinkedIn profile. But especially when you write posts, you've got options to either make them available only to your first level networks or the second and third level networks, or make them open to the wider public. And my advice and suggestion would be open up all your posts to the wider public so that even those people that aren't within your first, second, or third level connections, because of the luck of the algorithm, might be able to see your posts and therefore interact with them. And also, don't be afraid to ask publishers that you're working with to see if they will be putting up posts about publications, to make sure that they tag you specifically, or whether they have some pre-designed content or templates that you could sort of lift and edit and include in your on your own profiles. Adding links to all different social media profiles, make them as the short URL should be as simple as possible and as common as possible across all social media platforms. And yeah, linking them to your email signature and business cards. I also just want to mention that it's worth scheduling posts in advance, and there are different platforms for that. The free platform that I use to pre-schedule LinkedIn posts is called Buffer. Of course, as with anything free, there are always limitations. On Buffer, you have 5 free posts that you can schedule up to any point in time. When I first started really trying to develop my LinkedIn profile, but also at that time, it was Twitter was gaining a lot of traction. I would schedule 1 post a week. A Buffer has the added advantage, sorry, that you can schedule the same post on up to 3 different platforms on its free version. Just bearing in mind that LinkedIn has up to 3,000 characters per post, whereas Twitter, well, or X now has a much more limited number, or Blue Sky has a much more limited number of characters that you can use. So you just have to edit the content accordingly. Okay, so that was just a whistle-stop tour of the first part of the presentation and some sort of ideas in terms of setting up your profile and in terms of the content, the kinds of content that you can share, but also what kind of plan or what kind of thinking can you have to try and make your content work harder. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is to give you 15 minutes to have a 2-part discussion, if you will. One, if you could take about 7 minutes, I think we're going to break you up into groups of 3 or 4, depending on how many we are. Introduce yourselves, of course, if you want a bit of an elevator pitch there, or maybe your little bio headline there, and discuss what you think makes content memorable in your particular context, what you think makes content shareable or good practice that you may have seen somebody else do. And then we'll give you a reminder when there's 7 minutes left. And I think it would be nice if you could draft at least maybe 1 post, a LinkedIn post, to showcase something that you're working on. That's what I've suggested here. Or it could be a LinkedIn post about any of the other ideas. So whether it's something that you want to celebrate about an achievement that you've had recently, or celebrate the achievement of another colleague, anything like that. And even if the words aren't coming to you immediately, because we're not all, content writers or content creators, have a think at least maybe about the theme that you may want to post on, or your next post to be on. Think about what you want to be known for, what your interests, your values, your personal traits are, what makes you unique, or how in a post you could differentiate yourself from others. I think we're all back. Sorry, I didn't see the chat in my earlier presentation, and I just wanted to address a question that one of the colleagues asked about the Open for Work badge. They say, I've heard pros and cons and have recently chosen to use it as only for recruiters option, but definitely had more recruiters reach out to me when I included it for everyone last time I was searching. So in my view, I think having the Open to Work badge on as a default is always good. Even if you're not job searching, I would still have it on because it's so interesting to see some of the people that some of the recruiters that reach out to you. And I'm just a curious cat anyway, so I like to see what are the opportunities that are available anyway. I have been at my current job, not my previous, my current job for going on 8, 9 years now. So I'm very happy and settled, but it's always just nice to know. In terms of if you are actively looking for a job, and if you're happy for everyone in your network to know, then I agree, absolutely. Put the Open to Work badge, activate that and make it visible for everybody. It's just the caveat that there sometimes are individuals that are sensitive to whether or not people within their current institution are aware of them job hunting. But in my previous role, when I was job hunting, I had it on for everybody because as a postdoctoral researcher, I wanted to I was always worried about where my next role would come from. So I think it's a personal choice, but it's always useful. And those that have specialized LinkedIn recruiter profiles can always see it around your profile anyway, whether you have it activated for public or not. So I hope that helps answer your question. I think there've been a couple more questions that have come in that I'd quickly just like to take before we go into the next section, which is, let me just put the slide on so that you can see. It's about building connections. So Mateo's asked, what is the difference between a CV and the LinkedIn profile? I mean, what is the information that I need to write on LinkedIn instead of my CV? So I would say that your LinkedIn profile is a quick snapshot of what your more detailed CV, if we're talking about an academic CV, would be. LinkedIn is much more, I'm not, interactive is not the right word, but you have a lot more, I use the word real estate to write things. So, for example, to associate skills or multimedia, like a publication, a PDF file, a video, an image with different work experiences or different achievements and so on, whereas you don't have that flexibility with your CV. I think also with LinkedIn, it's an opportunity to be a lot more yourself, to show your personality more than a CV would be more formal. I'm sure there are many other differences that aren't immediately coming to mind. I should also say that in the free version of LinkedIn, and of course in the premium version has more artistic options, in my view. But in the free version of LinkedIn, you can download your LinkedIn profile to in the CV format, and then it automatically sort of there's a default template in which if you download your LinkedIn content into a CV format, it puts your skills and strengths in a panel on the right section, and then different headers for your work experience, your educational experience, and so on. So that's worth playing around as well. But it does download it into a PDF file, so you can't really edit it or play around with it. I hope that's helpful, Matteo. And if you have any other further question to add on to that, please let me know. Another colleague asked, do you have suggestions about how to write a post about what you're working on if you haven't published it yet? Or would you recommend against that? So again, I think that is a very personal choice. And it depends really on your own willingness of how much you think is worth sharing of your work. I think the positive aspect of LinkedIn is that colleagues are far more generous and collaborative and willing to share, but the content that you share and whether or not there is a fear that somebody might, pip you to the post or take your idea and take it further, that's a risk in any medium, even if you do conference presentations or poster presentations. So the same sort of cautiousness, if that's the word, that you would apply to a conference or a poster presentation, I would apply also to LinkedIn. Yes, so I hope that's helpful. I'm again, please don't hold me to it, but maybe get AI's help, like, in terms of how you would like to phrase something that you want to share, but that you're a little bit cautious about. That might be one way of doing it. I should put my hand up and caveat that English is not my first language. And so there have been times when I have had to turn to AI for a little bit of help with refining language where I'm a little bit tenuous about what I want to say or how I want to say it. Okay, do you have suggestion? Sorry. Okay, thank you to the open. I've heard things about desperation, which I've never quite understood. I think they're always extreme. At both ends of the spectrum, there are always very strong views that people have, even about, having LinkedIn profiles, about writing things. I have colleagues, for instance, professional colleagues, who, as a matter of principle, never take up the invitations to comment on LinkedIn blogs and posts as an expert because they feel that's their own intellectual property, and putting it there in a public space is compromising the principles that they have about their hard-earned knowledge and skills and work, and how willing they are to share it in such a public forum. So it's very much an individual thing, I would say. Um, okay, so Matteo asked on LinkedIn, is it allowed to quickly post also a small one-day course conferences like the one that we are following now, e.g. today? Oh, yes, of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is, in fact, one of the key content sources that people post about what they do professionally, what they've done, what their thoughts were about some professional engagement or interaction or a course or a conference or an event that they went on, what their takeaways were as well. Because in a way, it's like sharing your knowledge and spreading it more, and people appreciate and interact with that. And for me, one of the techniques that I have when I share something, which hopefully I will do after this session, to say today I was, honored and humbled to lead this ESWN session, is to post a question at the bottom of your post to get people engaging with it. Like, what do you think about setting up LinkedIn profiles? What are your thoughts about commenting and sharing your knowledge and skills in this public forum, and the generosity of, people to share their expertise? That's just off the head. And thank you, Rehmet, for the plug for the ESWN LinkedIn page. Everybody definitely sign up to that and add your thoughts to that. You're very welcome, Matteo. And if there are any other questions, please do pop them into the channel, because this is, like I said, this is a whistle-stop tour. We could do like a whole 3-day workshop on building LinkedIn profiles, but separately as well, once you've built your profile, how do you then use it to job hunt, to, well, we'll build connections is the next slide that I'm going to talk about. I'll keep an eye on the chat as well, but please do keep your questions coming. Okay. So, in terms of building connections, you can follow and connect with what I've divided into 4 different types of target audiences. So, those that you already have a professional relationship with, that you know personally or professionally, those that are your target audience. So whether they're colleagues in specific research organizations, or an area of expertise, a discipline area that you want to really connect with more and reach out with them. And I've put different strategies in the slides that will be shared with you later. People also that you're interested in and want to see in your news feed. And you'll see a lot of times when you come across individuals on LinkedIn, rather than having the option to connect with them, the primary option is for you to follow them. And what happens in that case is you get all their posts, their public posts, in your LinkedIn feed, whereas you're not directly connected with them. Now, usually at this stage, I get the question about what's the difference between being directly connected with someone and just following their public profile, their public posts. So posts are what they choose to share with you. Whereas when you're connected directly with someone, you have the ability, of course, to have unlimited messaging with them of as many numbers of characters, rather than the 255, I think, or 300 character limit that you have for private messaging on a free LinkedIn profile. And also, if you're directly connected with them, you can see everything on their standalone LinkedIn profile that they've made available for their first connections to see. So whether it's their work experience, their publication history, their skills, their strengths, the languages, the recommendations that other people have given them or that they've given to other people. But for me, I use the third option when they're very like public profiles. So I follow Simon Sinek, for instance, and his posts, and there are some other public figures as well that obviously you can't be directly connected with but I like keeping in touch with what they post. And then also professional societies, the ESWN being a prime example, and also conference organizers using hashtags to then lead you to profiles. So how does this work in practice and what does it look like? So what I've got here is I've just taken a screenshot of the ways that you can build connections using it's like a going down a rabbit hole, the different filters that you can apply to your searches within LinkedIn. So one example is the connections with people. And once you search for either an individual's name or a specific theme or a discipline, in this case, earth science, you then have the ability to filter the people through either your first level connections, i.e. the people you're already connected to, or second level or third level and beyond. You can see all the other uh, oh God, filters that you could apply. So those that are actively hiring, I apologize because I have a premium LinkedIn profile. You can see it's the different color over here. So some of these options might not all be available in a free LinkedIn profile, but you do have quite a few that you can explore with. The other way to build connections as well is through the groups that you can join. And on those groups, there are people that comment, that share posts, that share information about events that you can engage with, and so on. I've used a different term here. I used computational biology to show another kind of example. And you can even see how many members are part of the groups. You can see a little bit of information about some of the groups. Some of them are public groups, which means that you just click to join and you're automatically accepted and you can start posting automatically. Whereas some of them you need to be approved by one of the moderators of the group and then you can start posting. Again, very much like some of the other social media platforms as well. The other ones are options for looking for jobs. So for this, if you go into the job section of LinkedIn, sorry, in the search section of LinkedIn, you've then got the option, it's usually this little briefcase section. You've got the options for looking for the keywords related to the jobs, so materials chemistry in this case, the location of the job, if you want it to be specific. For me, this comes up automatically because I'm based in the UK. For yourselves, it might be different depending on where you were when you created your LinkedIn profile. And then you've got the option, once the jobs come up, to filter them by date posted, experience level, salary, companies as well. And it gives you all different options that you can then check to see. And I wanted to highlight company here because I wanted to show that. So, for example, with materials chemistry, it's not just higher education institutions that are looking for people with experience in this area. There are, dental partners, there's the third sector, the UK civil service. Again, these are all very UK centric examples that are coming up, but Amazon as well clearly has a job out there that has materials chemistry as part of the job description. So it's very interesting to me to see the trends and the ways that these jobs are advertised on LinkedIn. I also just wanted to put a plug over here. So it's not in my resources, but one of the really valuable tools for me when I was looking for my job has been this book, which is called The 2 Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton. And it talks about, for instance, with free LinkedIn profiles, how do you reach out to people? So say, for example, my focus is this head of skills in life sciences at Cogent Skills sounds really up my alley, and I'm interested in applying for it. So if I click on the company name, it'll show me if I have any common connections that work there already. And so if I wanted to reach out with them, within 75 words, there are examples over here of how you can reach out to people in organizations. This isn't, by the way, sponsored by Steve Dalton. I just love this book. It's a much loved book. But how you can reach out to them in a cold message almost and ask them just for a chat, whether about the specific job or just, generally about the ethos of the organization, the values, and so on. And in my personal experience, I have found people more willing than you would think to even have a quick conversation with you. So just some random tips there. In terms of how recruiters look at LinkedIn and what they look for, please, I'm caveating this with the fact that there are algorithms beyond my understanding as well that are at work. But these are some of the things that recruiters in my day job at Liverpool, that recruiters have told me that these are some of the things that they look at and that they use almost as a basis of whether or not to approach an individual on LinkedIn for particular opportunities. So there's the search and filtering, profile strength, how populated in inverted commas and how current and up to date are their profiles and so on. Are these individuals active on LinkedIn? What sort of recommendations and endorsements have they received from other people, and have they given to other people as well? And the broader connections. I've only got two more slides, and I appreciate we're already 9 minutes past. I apologize for going over the time. These are some of the other individuals who looked at LinkedIn. It's not just recruiters, it's your colleagues across your same institution or your wider industry, collaborators, certainly in academia, business partners. Sometimes it's through word of mouth. You hear of this individual who may have an experience or expertise in a certain area, and you just want to look them up. And increasingly, competitors as well are using LinkedIn to analyze different trends and ways around the industry. The last two slides are based on a lot of the comments that came on the Mira board about tips for what perhaps users should not do. So these are my at least 4 big red flags. Don't just create a profile and leave it incomplete. If you're not that keen on LinkedIn, and sometimes that's okay, LinkedIn may not be for you, delete your profile is better to it's better to delete your profile than just leave an incomplete profile that people might click on and be like, that this is clearly not somebody that engages with it a lot. Of course, always have professional photos. Make sure you know what the privacy settings are. I think LinkedIn generally is known to be a place where people share more professional updates rather than personal ones, but people like to share personal updates. I've had a number of colleagues who've had babies recently, so they talk about, how parenthood is making them reflect on their professional experiences and so on. And that's also a lovely thing to read, but just be mindful about, who you're sharing it with. And also don't spam recruiters, constantly messaging them, because when jobs are advertised, you do see the profile is connected with who is the recruiter that advertised for it, and you have the ability to reach out to them directly, send them a private message as well, but just be mindful of sending too many messages as well. And then the final one is I love seeing this question. It was about, can you recommend good practices for teaching others about LinkedIn? So whether it's your supervisors or your line managers and so on. And they're just 5 tips. Again, it really depends on people's skill levels already that exist with LinkedIn and their familiarity, but also what do you and what do they want to get out of it? So hopefully with this whistle stop tour that we've had today, it's been at least a good starting point for you to be able to think about what are some of the ways that you can harness the different functionalities of LinkedIn for whatever your objective is. And the last slide I have is just sharing these different LinkedIn resources that are really useful and that have been personally valuable for me. And I want to give credit to all of them, because all of them have helped inspire the content that I have been able to share with you today, as well as yourselves, of course, on the basis of which I've been able to, based on the themes we've put together some of the focus. Okay, so I'm sorry, I just want to come back to some of the questions and then I'll hand over back to Remit. Um, What is your advice on having a catchy headline or a title on LinkedIn? So I think it would come back to my slide, which I did right at the beginning, which is really, again, it depends on your objective. So for me, it should be short, snappy. I like having dividers. So the straight slash, sorry, I don't know what the technical term for this line is. Some people use stars as well, but just very short, snappy, because remember, whatever headline you have is the one that will appear when someone searches for you or when you post. Sorry, I know I'm going ahead and I apologize to colleagues, but see, this is so for instance, Nicholas Dean, apologies to Nicholas, you just came up on the search. His headline is Undergraduate Education Manager in the Department of Earth and Science and Earth Science and Engineering. So would that make you want to click more or connect with him or learn more about him? If you're looking at him as a colleague, or if you're looking at his profile as a recruiter, or if you're looking at his profile as a potential keynote speaker, these are some of the things that you need to keep in mind. Sorry, so there's no right or wrong answer. It depends on what your objectives are. I hope that helps with the in terms of the headline. Could the name and the author of the book please be? Oh, yes, of course. I'll post it in the chat. I'll just go through all the questions first. Yes, it was the 2-hour job search by Steve Dalton. Is there more weight given to original content posts versus reposting and reposting with thoughts? That's the $1,000,000 question, Megan. And my honest answer is, I'm assuming when you say more weight, as in by weight by recruiters, I don't know. I think they obviously like to see original thought, but it's also useful to see the kinds of comments that you're making on other people's content and what you're sharing. But if your question was about the algorithm, like, does that lift it up? I absolutely cannot comment on that. I don't have any idea. From my perspective, I think a balance of all of them is good. More recently, because it's been a particularly busy period for me professionally, I'm super guilty of just sharing content and just reposting it blindly without even writing my own comments. But we go through these phases and ups and downs. Again, it all depends on what is your content plan, like what is your purpose for engaging with LinkedIn at this particular point in time. And I just want to admit just one last thing before I hand over to Remit. So from my perspective, over even a 6-month period, I go through different priorities for which I'm using LinkedIn. Sometimes for me, it's really important to use it actively because conference season is coming up and I want to see what other people are focusing on and what are the kinds of angles that I want to take in terms of my participation in a conference. Sometimes it's just to show that I'm active on it. More recently, because I haven't been very well. It was just about sharing things, commenting on each other's achievements and on my colleagues' achievements and so on. But in the past, when I've been job hunting, I was very mindful and purposeful even about the content that I shared and what I was sharing it for, like saying that this really resonated with me because it made me think about so and so forth. And that was really when I was actively job hunting, is things that I was doing. Okay. Right. I think those are all the questions. I'm so sorry, Ramit, for being so bad with timekeeping. Over to you